Oh no, wait. Okay, hi, thanks everyone for coming. We have a small in-person audience here and hopefully a nice large online audience. I'd like to welcome you all. I should take my mask off really, since I'm here, so you can see my lips. So we are presenting today the results of about a year-long research process. We've been through various iterations. And we're quite happy with what we're presenting today. We're going to dive straight in. I'm not going to do too much of a preamble. We'll explain what it is afterwards, but hopefully it should be perfectly clear what's going on here from what you're seeing on the screen behind us. There's three sort of vignettes that are designed to be different from each other to express different use cases of this framework for motion capture streaming that we've developed. And we'll go into much more detail after that and all the thank yous and stuff like that. So we'll just dive straight into about 25 minutes, I think. Okay?
pose. And squat pose. Excellent. Yep. And A pose, please.
Yes. Gotcha. Long, zero in,
And T pose.
long, just reset.
And squat pose. And all good.
Okay, I'm just going to switch on the lights a little bit, sorry. Oh. Sorry to those who came in a little bit late. I'm sorry we had trouble finding the place. Hopefully everyone online found the place quite nicely. We're going to share a mic here, so I apologize for this. So thanks so much to our amazing dancers who have worked so hard for the past few days. We have Hannah Burfield, Jack Thompson, and in New York, the wonderful Cristia Morabito. So, as is in tune with the theme of Being Human Festival, this is all about humanities and arts research and interpreting that. This is very much research, it's very much experimental, and as I say, it's still very much a work in progress as well. So we think we've done quite well with the meager resources we've had in such a short time. So what you saw today was we're demonstrating a framework for the streaming of motion capture data that we created ourselves, which is called Goldsmith's MoCap Streamer. We are working with these perception neuron motion capture suits. And as I said earlier, I will repeat, the intention of today is really to showcase and demonstrate a few of the different possible uses of this. It is experimental research, and the suits are not 100% reliable. As you saw, there's a little bit of drift and stuff like that. Ironically, this room, despite being absolutely wonderful for projection, creates quite a lot of magnetic interference. So we do experience quite a lot of drift, hence the reset in between each of the vignettes that we presented today. So I think I will just talk about the first vignette, and Clem's going to help me talk you through them because I'm going to forget to say stuff for sure. So the first one you saw we call I'm not quite sure about this, but Dance of the Foxes in D minor. And this was very much has developed upon a theme of being quite theatrical, a little bit narrative, almost like a stage set. A little bit magical. Obviously, the trope that we're playing with here is that this mystical figure, this wood nymph, is the remote dancer who's not quite present in the room, but yet is influencing the action and driving. What I should have said about all of these vignettes is they're not choreographed in any strict sense. They're semi-structured, improvisational, and therefore the dancers are reacting to each other in real time. What else would you say about this, Clem?
Okay, so there are a few things that the dancers are actually controlling in real time in this scene. So this mystical being, Cristia, in Brooklyn, in New York, has the ability to control, first of all, the visuals. So when Cristia is getting her hands together, this is how she disappears completely. And then when the hands are getting far apart, the particles appear and she appears in the scene and can play with this with the two dancers in London. And on the other side, Cristia has also the ability to control the music, and the music is completely generative. So based on the movement, you can hear that music being created in real time. The last thing that Cristia is able to control is the lights in the scene. So when she gets close to the floor, the lights goes down, and then when she rises up, the lights goes up. As she's demonstrating in that.
Yeah, so the second scene, are you going to switch, or are we going to stick with this one? But the second one we call Molten Mercury. And what we're playing with here was a more abstract figure. Also the idea that the figures, first of all, the shape of and the abstraction of the figure would affect the way the dancers are moving. But also they can move up to and pass through each other. And we were certainly playing with this idea of being able to trigger interactions in between the dancers within this virtual space. Do you have anything to say about that?
Just around that virtual interaction, we were really interested in this idea of virtual touch. And we realized this is actually the first time we have two dancers in the suits in the same space together. All the research we've done so far, everyone was remote. And we found that it was really interesting to find this balance and to experiment with the virtual touch between the three dancers remote, but also virtually having the two dancers in the physical space trying to touch each other virtually, and then how then when they become in contact in the physical space, what happens virtually, and then what happens when the remote dancers start getting intertwined with this. So we were trying to kind of experiment with this balance, and then the interactions that are built in, the moltens become red when they approach each other and then get in contact in the virtual space.
Yes, and the third one, we ended on a little bit of a party note. We are calling, what were we calling it? This was very much on the fly, as you can tell. We called it, we were not allowed to call it Angry Birds, we called it Bird Battle, a trademark, Angry Birds. And here we're going for, we started with the concept of a sort of a birds sort of fluffing their feathers to do battle, and segued into this idea of a kind of dance battle or Vogue battle, where each takes a solo and then plays off each other in a kind of antagonistic way. So what else could we say about that?
I guess just kind of want to mention the reference to some of the trends that are happening at the moment in virtual reality. So if we look at spaces like VR Chat and Neos, you have kind of a small group of dancers who are experimenting with motion captures with some trackers and are doing those dance battles and dance-offs in virtual reality at the moment. What we're trying to do here is looking at what we could do with a full motion capture, and then how we can then really trying to express the full body motion and adding elements to the avatar and the character. How can that expand the movement? So you have this headpiece that kind of goes with the head of the dancer, and you have all the cloth that is attached to the body, and how can that extend the movement of the dancers?
And obviously the principle of the research was to bring people by whatever means into virtual spaces together to dance. It was driven initially and funded by the AHRC through research into COVID-19 and the frustrations that some of our collaborators were experiencing in relying upon video conferencing. So we said, well, there's these new technologies that are available, that are being used, that have not been quite pulled together in this fashion for motion capture streaming. Now, one other iteration of this, technological iteration, is one that Clem has complete ownership over, which we did earlier just in the pre-show gathering, which was using WebXR, browser-based Mozilla Hubs system to bring dancers into a virtual space together with a virtual audience as well in VR headsets. And it's certainly something we want to develop on more in the future. But maybe Clem can, since it's her baby, speak more about that.
Sure. So what we did as a kind of pre-gathering is a bit of an informal space. I think we will probably show you a few images.
Yeah, you can do a little video playback from earlier in the day. That would be great. Rob?
It's on the stream. It's not here. Okay. So I'm going to walk you through it. So earlier we had this environment based in Mozilla Hubs, but in a custom version of Mozilla Hubs, thanks to the very generous support of Onboard XR, and especially Brendan Bradley and Michael Moran, who gave us this server space to host the event in Mozilla Hubs. We built an environment where audience members and dancers could be in the same virtual space at the same time and interact. We, interestingly, experienced a lot of technical issues tonight, so this is very much work in progress and research here. But what that allows people to do, because this is browser-based, people can join in headset, but can also join from a computer or a phone, and be in the same environment with other audience members and the dancers, and we can look at how we can create interactions in real time. There we go, you have it behind me, between the different users. So an example you have on the stream and behind me is Christia, who was in New York, was playing the kind of role of a living statue in this fake gallery space, and was being woken up by the audience walking by. And then we also built in other interactions where the audience could pick up some cubes where we had prompts written on it. And then depending on the cubes that were picked up and put in a specific space, then Christia would react differently and adapt her kind of body language and movement vocabulary.
Yeah, we would have included that in this event, but it was a bit of a switch around of technology. We don't hold you up.
One thing I would just maybe specify is you will probably see a really big kind of visual quality difference between what you could see in WebXR and what you've seen during the event, and that's an interesting area of research as well. So because this is browser-based, we have to almost put more emphasis on the interaction with the audience, but tone down the visuals because the rendering power is much lower. On the other side, what you've seen before that's been created by Neil Coughlin, who's behind, is running completely in Unreal Engine. And kind of the next step is to see how can we start merging the two together and bringing kind of the visual quality up, but also bringing audience members in the virtual space with us.
So in the next iteration of our research, which we're already funded for by the AHRC through to 2023, we're going to be working very much on AI solutions, building more stuff in VR, plus also building an international network by spreading, deploying what we've done here through a global network. So we're going to do a quick Q&A. Hopefully there's some questions on the live stream coming through, but anyone else in the room. But while I'm just inviting people on, I will just read through a few thanks. I don't think I actually introduced myself in all of that fuss. I'm Dr. Daniel Strutt. I work here at Goldsmiths in the Department of Media Communications and Cultural Studies. I have with me Clémence de Beig, a graduate of Goldsmiths and also a dancer. Keir Klein, part of the research team, also an ex-dancer and a creative technologist as well from the Computational Arts Master's course here. Our creative king, creative director, Neil Coughlin, who has created all the stuff in Unreal for tonight. And we have Rob Hall at the back of the room also running the live stream, who also works at Goldsmiths in the Hatch Lab, doing lots of soldering and stuff like that. I have a few other people while you gather your questions in the live stream or think about your questions amongst the people in the room. I really need to thank our dancers. Again, obviously, I mentioned them straight off the bat as the most important people in the room, really. But we also want to thank our New York partners who have really gone out of their way to support what we've done today at great personal cost. Oh, look, there they are. So this is George and Ashton in the Gowanus Loft there's an art space in Brooklyn, which is run by the company Vanderbilt, and this is being simultaneously live streamed on their network called Midheaven Network. I also need to thank the AHRC who funded all this research and pays all of us. I would like to thank Akram Khan Company, our official partner to this project, and particularly Maven Koo, who's a dear friend of mine and has kind of artistic overview and has jumped in on the Zoom from Chicago, I believe, for plenty of direction, artistic direction. Clem has already thanked our XR partners on board XR and Brendan Bradley there. And particularly I'd like to thank Target 3D who have supplied free kit for us to use today and are probably watching right now. So Keir, I believe, is going to fire questions and direct questions at the appropriate people. I'm going to field the maybe academic questions, but the technical stuff I certainly can't answer to, and any dancer questions would be directed towards them. Yep.
Thanks. Cool. So we have one question from Social Convention. They say, this is really exciting to see, the smoothest of anything like this I've seen by a long way. So well done, everyone. And their question is, how far away is this tech from being usable for live, public, paid performance? So I don't know who wants to...
I mean, I can start with this one. I need to do that. Yeah, obviously, Facebook announces after we've already called our event Dancing into the Metaverse, that they now have complete ownership. But we absolutely see that this is the future of people engaging in these kinds of realms. So it's, is it a race or is it a collaboration? I don't really know. But clearly there's a lot of people working on different systems of motion capture. Our system is using inertial motion sensor motion capture, which, as you see, is really wonderful in many senses, but is always going to be affected by a little bit of magnetic interference. Could we sustain this for a full performance of half an hour, 30 minutes in the right place with no magnetic interference? We probably could. But we certainly, our aim today was simply to showcase the possibilities and suggest the possibilities. But guaranteed, in the next couple of years, you'll be seeing full performances like this. In fact, Neil worked on one that he can maybe speak to that was considerably more expensive than ours.
Hello. It's a very tiny microphone, this. Yeah, I mean, this kind of technology is advancing very quickly and has been massively over the last year. And the project that Dan just mentioned that I worked on, and also Johnny, who's in the room here as well, worked on, was the RSC Dream piece. And yeah, like Dan said, it was like, it's a kind of different kind of budget scale. Like there's kind of, one side of the end, the spectrum of like kind of big budget performances, and then what we're trying to do is come at it from the kind of like very grassroots. And like, I guess a lot of this stuff is kind of meeting in the middle, because a lot of the tech that we're using is similar. Like we're both using Unreal in this project, myself for this one and also in the Dream project. And then technology-wise for the suits, like there's kind of different kind of price points for the tech. But I think, and like Dan was just saying before as well, like this is hopefully a collaboration between lots of different companies rather than like someone just owning the whole thing. So I'd like to see lots of people kind of doing this, and just keep chipping away at it until it kind of feels a bit more solid.
Just say one more thing. Yeah, and obviously we're working on ways to stabilize the motion capture, machine learning solutions, hybridization of the system, for instance, with Vive trackers. Using VR headsets also makes for greater stability of the motion capture. And in all of these ways, by hybridizing and through a general evolution of the technology, we will very soon see fully sustained longer performances, hopefully in the mainstream and hopefully affordable to the general public.
Thank you. Cool. So we have one last question from Horst Jonas, who says, what would this mean and this project mean for embodied experiences and work that is not very visual but is more concerned with sensual experience? So I think what they're getting at is, what does it mean for work outside of like performance and that sort of stuff? What other use cases could this sort of software have?
Yeah, obviously we're working with dancers because dance, for me, is just the most elemental expression of movement, and it doesn't require things like facial expression or verbalization to create a strong communicative act. So obviously there's suggestions of theatre within this, as we've spoken about. Obviously, if you look at Facebook's meta video, you see lots of people in workplaces gathering together. But we also look to gaming technology a lot, of things that are already happening, social gatherings in places like Fortnite by Epic Games. And we think that this is a form of, this fully embodied action in virtual spaces does not need to be the dystopian hell presented to us through movies like Wall-E. And there's spaces for action, agency, creativity that need to be crafted within this as well. Does anyone else want to say anything to that question?
I think also like just giving someone a body in a virtual space as well, and like the simplest thing like having a hug with someone, even if you're dressed as like a hot dog or something, which me and my wife did actually do whilst she was away for quite a while, and we couldn't see each other for like 10 months. So we were using like VR headsets and like in with just hand controllers, like being able to give her a hug with them was like one little kind of really nice moment. But like the idea that you could have the whole suit on, and it's just a different form of expression, really. Like you can look at someone on Zoom and you can see their face and their expressions and everything, but when you see people in a suit, like even just looking at, you know, all these kind of apps that we've got running at the moment, you can kind of tell who's in a suit, just the way they stand and the way they walk. And I think that's just, it's an extra layer of expression, which we've kind of not really tapped into that much yet in this kind of virtual space, which I think is really interesting.
Five on the right side.
And I think it's important to say that like these sorts of embodied virtual experiences have been happening for quite a long time. We can see forms of thinking around virtual reality happening as early as like the 1800s, where they used to paint giant theatres with landscapes and people would go in and feel this embodied experience. It's only now with projects like this and technology like this, we're closing the gap between the fully virtual touch and the fully physical touch. But yes, that is all of the questions from...
Do we want to open this to the floor?
So first of all, congratulations. Really impressive and beautiful and brilliant. I'm really interested to understand from the dancers what your experience was and how you had to adapt what your normal practice would be, and how you found it.
And Christina can also answer this one, maybe in New York after you guys.
Yeah. So I think it's quite different to live performance because in live performance you have an audience which is front-facing normally in traditional theatre setting. And I think you have to be a little bit more out of your body, and you have to be on a different awareness level than normal. Like if you are dancing in a space with dancers, of course you're aware of each other, but there is a whole nother level when you're thinking about two spaces, which is the physical space and then the virtual space, and how to navigate yourself within both. And also if you're dancing as something that isn't maybe human, it's thinking about like how that is going to influence your movement, and of course being covered in wearing a suit and straps, like whether that is a physical restraint or just learning to work with that sensation on your body as well is quite a fun but also at first strange experience to kind of go through.
Something that's actually just come to me now from that question is, I think a lot of the time in dance, like we work with imagery, which exists, I guess, in like another space, like in the imagination inside of us, you know what I mean? So I think like this virtual world is like, it's another space. Like, I don't know, I equate it to kind of something to like my brain as well, in terms of like the producing of the imagery. It's easy, sometimes it could be easy to respond to, like the fox thing, like the characterization of that is coming from the outside and in another space. So I think in some ways there's like connections between these, I think, imagery and the use of image to stimulate movement and to inform our movement and make decisions. So that I think is like a similarity, but I think the biggest difference I feel is that a lot of the time that can be coming from inwards, and now the information is coming from outside of the body, which I think that's a difference in the experience, but there's quite similarities in the kind of use of imagery. That's what I would kind of say from this. But yeah.
Is Christia there in New York? Can she answer the question? Rob?
Of course, we're still here.
No.
Brooklyn is always in the house.
Yeah. Christia, did you have any out-of-body moments?
I'll stand by. We're going to mic her up for you. Christina, come into the stage.
I think you said yesterday that there were moments where you fully projected out, didn't and lost yourself within that virtual space. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think so. I think you still are able to have those performative moments and like creative moments of feeling really together with each other. Because when you're dancing with someone, that I think will always naturally happen. There's always a connection there, even if it's not the most literal thing. Obviously, in some of these scenes we did, it was quite literal what our relationship was to each other. but it's a weird kind of zone in, zone out. So you zone into that, and then you also have to zone out and think, I'm looking at these screens, what's my avatar doing, where are we? And it's a real mental switch that you have to do. But it's still fun, and it keeps the performance really dynamic, I think.
Christia's there with a microphone. Maybe you want to speak to that, out of body. What was your experience like from New York, from Brooklyn, I should say, connecting with us? George, we can't get the audio there.
Stand by, coming to you right now.
Yeah.
No, just gonna have to spread it through Zoom.
This has been our life for the last 3 days of chatting to these floating voices.
Also learning how to do hybrid.
Try speaking now. This is not going to work though. And hang on, just rerouting very quickly so that No, I'm just going to turn on the mic here.
If this is the smallest of our technical problems today, that's okay. This project has been like spinning many moving plates, moving parts.
Right there.
A quick rewire.
Correct. Inputs, internal mic. And can you hear my voice right now?
Yes.
Awesome. So then, Christia, just speak to the room.
So yeah, it's been really interesting because obviously I've never met to connect in such a way, through Metaverse is pretty incredible. And I'm really not thinking about myself, my human body. I'm thinking about my avatar and how it relates to them in space, and how I can really, integrate myself into what's happening in that group. And it is absolutely, an out-of-body experience, and I'm just very fortunate to work with them.
Great, thanks. Yeah, in previous iterations of this during COVID, obviously we had dancers in their living rooms looking at laptop screens, and finally we have properly immersive kind of spaces for all the dancers to be in. Did you say you had a question?
What are the next steps in regards to this technology? What do you want to do next with it, or how you want to use it?
Yeah, so as I already briefly mentioned, we applied for follow-on funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council, which was successful through till March 2023, I believe. And the purpose of that is to, we've demonstrated here this year in several iterations at the London Film Festival, and here in this space in, I think, May, and also in Hamburg at VR Ham Festival. So I think we've made a really clear case that this is useful technology that can be played with more. The next step for us, and the name of the project, is called Building an International Network. So we're going to, with our sponsors, who I failed to mention so far, Neutom, who produced the motion capture PN suits, they're our official project partner in that. We're going to send out the suits and provide technical and creative support over a 6-month residency with a stipend paid to those companies to basically create whatever work that they feel appropriate. And then we're going to put them into collaborative relationships with each other to try and work together, ending in a nice big symposium, showcase, an extended version of what we've done here today, but not creatively led by us, so to speak. Now, as part of that project, we're also, we have a machine learning AI side project led by a researcher in this university called Clarice. And, she's here, sorry. Hi. And the emphasis of this is about accessibility. It fits in with the general theme of sustainable development for this follow-on funding, and it's about bringing as many people as possible into the fold for people who maybe can't access traditional spaces for this kind of performance. Yeah.
So this is finished technology.
That's
what I mean. If there was anything more like, are you wanting to do anything new, modify it in any way? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, that was my mistake.
No, that's fine. So is this the complete technology? Like, this is it? You don't feel as if it's ready? Well, not for market, but of course, other persons can use it now. That's what I'm understanding.
Yes.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. Okay.
So now maybe
Yeah.
specify a little bit. So the suit itself is provided by Norton, my partner on the project. This is a completely finished product, and they are iterating and releasing more and more reliable systems. What we've been building on top of that is the ability to stream the motion capture data and to connect in almost real time different locations and dancer together in the scenes. Now, what I think we're hoping to do with that second part of the project is to see what other dance companies will do with it. So kind of next step of the creative process and having different dance companies from different part of the world and different backgrounds started interacting together, and also maybe companies who've not definitely worked with technology before, what's going to trigger them, what's going to inspire them to work this way. The only thing, maybe kind of based on your question, in terms of purely the technology itself, there are things that we would like to work on, or would like Notum to provide solutions for, or any kind of the motion capture technology companies. Those suits are absolutely brilliant to track the motion and the detail of the quality of the movement. They are not the best in positioning the dancers in the space. Then you have other type of motion capture technologies where you have cameras, and the global positioning is really good, but then the detail movements might be lacking a little bit. And then you've got hybrid systems that do both. They become really, really expensive. And then we have the challenge of having spaces that allow you to set up the cameras and then calibrate and all of this. So one of the reasons why we started working with those type of suits is because anyone can take it. During COVID, we're doing this in living rooms and daughters' bedrooms and so on. So the accessibility of taking it anywhere is a really interesting kind of trade-off for the global positioning. So one thing we would like to start seeing is how can we maybe find a low-budget solution to hybridize those type of motion captures, and then how can we standardize the format to be able to stream it between different locations. So that's one angle. The other thing I would say from a technology point of view is, I mean, at least I would like to see that, is how can we bring the audience in? So far we have you in the space, which is a pretty immersive space. We have people on the live stream. How can we now have people in the metaverse with the dancers, and how can we bring the dancers in an even more immersed environment where they can figure out where they are in the space and so on. We're not quite there yet in making this happen with the type of interactions and visuals we presented in the second part of the performance tonight.
Sorry, another question at the back. We'll have to wrap this up soon. We don't want to hold people too long.
Thank you. So first of all, I think this is like super interesting stuff. And I'm already like surprised at the low latency that it's actually like happening. So yeah, but it's faster than Zoom. Yeah, actually, yeah, I could see them like tilting over their heads, and it's like just instantaneous, which is like 200, 300 milliseconds. So the idea of the whole thing is like, are you trying to like bring the whole world, like no matter where people could be, just into a single space and create public events, something like that? Or is that the idea of the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take it back over here. Yeah, that's the idea. You know, it's not just about dance, it's not just about performance, it's about just bringing people together in virtual spaces. You know, as an AHRC project, I would add that, you know, the software that we create is open source. We need to work a little bit on the interpretation of that so people can actually pick up and use it. But the idea is it's absolutely there for people to pick up and adapt to their own uses, their own use cases. But as you can see, it is considerably faster than video conferencing, for instance, in terms of communication, as you picked up on.
Quick follow-up question. So in 5 years' time, what other industries do you think this technology could be used? Is there any other sectors or industries that you thought about?
Yeah. The question was what other industries would be interested in picking up on this technology? I mean, does anyone else want to answer that question? It's not me. Yeah.
I mean, there are many that are already using the technology at the moment. motion capture has been used for many, many years in more kind of the film and game industries. By being able to stream data in almost real time, that could also allow for remote collaborations with artists, not necessarily having the talents coming to really big motion capture studios. So this is already something that is happening. There are a lot of things happening in the theater world. So using the ability to track the entire body of an actor, and then you can combine this with face tracking and picking a mic, and you have an entire actor in the virtual space who is able to provide a live performance, potentially with other performers who are in different locations. Then there are many other industries. As soon as you can put a body in a virtual environment and track the entire body, and you combine this for certain industries with the face and the voice and so on, you have a lot of ways of communicating and have embodied interactions in that space.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw one recently actually where it was a remote IT department where it was like some guy trying to patch in like a server cable, but with like I'm not sure if it was actually a perception neuron suit. I mean, that's one of the kind of more mundane examples, but like I think across, pretty much any industry where there's like a person that has to do a thing in a place and they can't be in that place at that time, there's that, the possibility is kind of endless in that regard. I'd like to think that with our solution so far, we're kind of on the kind of the lower end of the scale where it's not like some crazy huge budget thing that you have to sign up to, whereas like we're definitely more grassroots in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, our priority was always affordability and accessibility. Many industries are plowing money into extremely expensive systems, so we were always focused on the affordability. Now, creative practitioners always have to use those cheaper technologies because they're generally not funded by huge companies. Since 2010, people were using the performers, and creative technologists were using the Microsoft Kinect camera from the Xbox to do performances. There was lots of problems with that. This is, the next stage forward. There will be another stage forward in the technology in the next year or so for sure, that we're keeping an eye out for. But yeah, it's basically a case of watch this space and see where this goes over the next few years. Hopefully we can be part of that.
We have one last question.
Yeah.
In terms of the things you're exploring, I guess I love the metaphor of the hug, that you have the physical presence and you're trying to duplicate that in the virtual presence, so you have that visually. Have you looked into haptics or touch? Is that something you want to explore?
It's funny you mentioned that.
This is a bit unrelated to this research project, but in my own art practice, I work a lot with haptic sensors and how to merge kind of motion capture and haptic feedback. There's one piece I've done that's called Remote Intimacy, where two dancers, including Christia actually, he was still in New York, were able to touch each other remotely and feel each other thanks to haptic feedback. So we can now also look at some technologies like the Tesla suits, our kind of full haptic suits, combining this with motion capture. And then again, this is very much research project level at the moment, but what can we do in bringing together those embodied interactions and the physical kind of kinetic haptic feedback you can receive.
You can scratch your own back now.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just said you can scratch your own back now through haptics. Okay, I think we should wrap it up there. Follow us on Instagram on @mocapstreamer for any announcements about upcoming events and stuff like that. @Goldsmiths Mocap Streamer, sorry. And thank you all for coming today. We're running a few workshops tomorrow. I think some of those people might be watching just now. So this continues through the day tomorrow, getting people in suits, getting people into VR, and watch this space in the future. Thank you very much. And thank you for the answers. Yeah. Thank you, New York. Thank you, Brooklyn. Thanks. Okay.